what you need to do before you can rent a property. And I mean as far as the tenant goes, I don't mean as far as the building. I'm on about like the legalities and the requirements for a new tenancy. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. And while I've got you here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Do it now before you forget. Lots of people keep saying to me that by the time the video is finished, they've forgotten to subscribe. So do that now and let's get started. Okay, so there are two areas to letting out your property, and this applies to whether it's a HMO or whether it's a single let. You've got legal requirements and then you've got some non-legal requirements. The first legal requirement is that you need to have an EPC, which is an Energy Performance Certificate. Okay, so an EPC is an Energy Performance Certificate, and what that does, it grades your house from A to G. So A is the most energy efficient and G is the most inefficient house. Okay, you employ an EPC surveyor to do this. It normally costs anywhere between £50 and £75, and then they go around your house and they assess everything in the house. So they might assess the windows, the loft insulation, flooring, your gas boiler if you've got one, or if it's electric, whatever it may be, all of your heating. They assess everything and they give you a rating. So your property needs to have a minimum of an E. That is actually a legal requirement. If your property is an F or a G, you cannot rent the property out. You need to make improvements and bring it back. Okay? So that's the first thing. You need an EPC, and you have to give every tenant a copy of the EPC. And not only that, but when you advertise the property to let, whether it be on one of the websites or in the newspaper or wherever it may be, even if it's in a newsagent window, you have to legally give the EPC rating of that property. So if it was a D, you would put in your ad that EPC is band D. Okay, so that's the first thing that you need to do. The next legal requirement is you need to give them a how to rent guide. Now this is a document that you can download from the government website, and below here the link will come up. I'm also going to put a link in the description of the comments, so if you want to just click on it, you can go straight to the site. So you must give the tenant a how to rent guide, and in there it just lists things like the tenant's rights and what they can do at the end of the tenancy, help and advice on finding a place, if things go wrong with the tenancy or the property and all that kind of stuff. But it's a government document that you must give out, and it's called How to Rent Guide. Okay, the next thing is a right to rent check. So essentially we have to check that every tenant is legally allowed to rent in the UK, particularly in the last 10 or 15 years, where we've seen lots of European countries, lots of European people move to the UK. We don't know if they're legally allowed to be here, and so the government want us to check every single person that we rent to make sure that they are legally allowed to reside and rent in the UK. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. You should get off every tenant a copy of their driving license or passport. Okay, now if they haven't got that and they have come from another country, then they should have some Home Office documentation. So they might have a certificate of what's it called? A certificate of registration. So yeah, they'll have a Home Office certificate of registration or a naturalisation of a British citizen. Okay, so they have some form of document. Okay, now there is a huge fine if you don't do this and you're found to be renting to somebody that's not allowed to be in the UK. You're going to get a £3,000 fine. Okay, so it's imperative that you check that they're allowed to rent in the UK. Okay, the next thing we need is you need to give them a tenancy agreement. The most common form of tenancy agreement is an AST, which stands for an Assured Short Hold Tenancy Agreement. And this is a document that describes effectively what the terms of the tenancy are. How long are you going to rent the property out for? What the deposit is, what is covered in the tenancy, is it furnished, is it unfurnished, their right to terminate, your right to terminate. It's effectively like a small mini contract, okay? It's an agreement, okay? So you need to give them a tenancy agreement, obviously. The next legal requirement is that the deposit cannot be kept by you. Years ago, we would take a deposit off the tenant, we would just keep it in our bank account, and then we would give it back at the end of the tenancy, minus any damage if there was any damage. But what happened is the government brought in a protection scheme, a tenancy deposit protection scheme, and basically all deposits have to be lodged with an approved government scheme. So you don't keep the money, this scheme keeps the money. And all the time that money belongs to the tenant. Even though they've given it to you, it is not yours. You have to lodge it with one of the schemes. So there are 3 schemes. There is the tenancy deposit scheme, there is my deposits, and there is the deposit protection scheme. Okay, so we've got TDS, DPS, and my deposits. So you have to legally lodge that, and then you have to tell the tenant which scheme you've put their money into, and then they get a reference number. Most of the time they'll get a login, so they can log into one of those portals and check for themselves. Okay, so last really but not least is the non-legal aspects. So that is things like an inventory. So I would always recommend that you do an inventory, do a video inventory. There's no arguing with a video. So do a video inventory and have a newspaper with today's date on and video the newspaper, or have your iPad or your iPhone or your mobile phone and go to the BBC website or something with a date and video the date so we know the date, and then literally just go around the whole building and document everything. So whatever is in the building, whatever's included, or even what's not included, okay? You'd be surprised how many tenants will try and claim for a washing machine that was never in there, and then sometimes it can be your word against theirs, okay? So just go around every room. If there's no washing machine in the utility or the kitchen, video it all so we know what's there, okay? My advice is to take everything out of the house, even white goods, and just literally rent it with an oven and a hob, okay? Different if we're doing a HMO, but I'm just talking about on a single let. Just take everything out, okay? Don't give any furniture, nothing. If you start giving furniture, you're getting into like fire risks and all those kind of stuff. So on a single let, just let it as a single let. And the last one is insurance. So it's not a legal requirement, but you'd be surprised how many landlords don't insure the property. We have a landlord's insurance, a block policy. So every time we purchase a new policy, we add it to the block policy. So we just add it on, and they just update it, and our monthly premiums go up. But if it's your first time buying, or even if you second or third time buying, you'd be surprised how many people forget to insure the property. Okay, so you don't need to insure for the contents. That's the tenant's responsibility. What you're insuring for is the building for fire, flood, theft, if somebody steals the boiler, or accidental damage if the tenant does some damage to pipe work or the kitchen or something. That's the kind of thing you're insuring for. Okay, so guys, you've got legal responsibilities, non-legal responsibilities. These are really important and come with fines if you don't do them. So I would really encourage you to, if you're new to this, I'd really encourage you to have a look at what I've said here. And as I say, there will be some links below to the how to rent guide from the government. Hit the subscribe button, guys. That way you don't lose out on any of these valuable videos that I'm putting out there, guys. Okay, so I'll see you next time.